For anyone who has ever spent hours, days, or even weeks carefully building the perfect development environment on a Linux machine, there is one thought that always creeps into the back of your mind whenever a major system upgrade is announced. It is not excitement about the new features, not curiosity about updated software, and not even the promise of better performance. It is that quiet, slightly unsettling question: will everything still work exactly the way I need it to? That question becomes even more real when you have just finished setting up a complete full-stack development environment, configuring every dependency, solving obscure compatibility issues, tweaking shell settings, installing packages, and finally reaching that satisfying point where everything just works. There is something deeply rewarding about building a development setup from scratch. It is almost like constructing your own digital workshop, carefully arranging every tool exactly where you want it. You install your preferred code editor, configure extensions, set up version control, connect your repositories, fine-tune your terminal, adjust your shell prompts, install language runtimes, configure package managers, set environment variables, and gradually create a machine that feels like an extension of your own thought process. It is not just software configuration. It becomes personal infrastructure. That is exactly why the idea of moving from Linux Mint 18.1 to Linux Mint 19 feels like more than just a routine upgrade. It is not simply clicking an update button and waiting for the system to reboot. For many developers, this transition feels like standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down at the unknown, wondering whether the leap forward will be smooth and effortless, or whether it will mean hours of troubleshooting, rebuilding, and trying to recreate an environment that took so much time to perfect. The concern is completely understandable. Anyone who has gone through major Linux distribution upgrades in the past knows that there can be surprises. Sometimes everything works flawlessly, and the process feels almost magical. Other times, package conflicts appear out of nowhere, custom configurations break, dependencies behave unexpectedly, and suddenly your productive development machine becomes a puzzle that demands immediate attention. For someone who has just invested significant time into creating a full-stack development workflow, the possibility of disruption is enough to make anyone pause before upgrading. Linux Mint 18.1 has been a reliable foundation for many developers. It offered stability, familiarity, and enough flexibility to support everything from web development to backend engineering. Whether your stack includes Node.js, Python, PHP, Ruby, Docker, PostgreSQL, MySQL, MongoDB, Nginx, Apache, or all of the above, Mint 18.1 provided a dependable environment where developers could focus on building rather than constantly fixing their systems. Once properly configured, it became the kind of setup you trust without even thinking about it. That trust is not built overnight. It comes from repeated success. Every time your development server starts without issues, every time your build pipeline runs smoothly, every time your local database launches exactly as expected, your confidence in the system grows. Eventually, your machine stops feeling like software and starts feeling like a dependable workspace. It becomes the digital equivalent of a favorite desk or workshop bench, familiar down to the smallest detail. This is why major upgrades create such mixed emotions. On one hand, Linux Mint 19 brings clear improvements. It introduces newer package versions, updated kernels, better hardware support, performance enhancements, security updates, and long-term support advantages. These are not minor benefits. They represent meaningful progress that can improve both system reliability and development efficiency. Staying on an older release indefinitely is rarely ideal, especially when modern development tools increasingly expect newer libraries and system components. On the other hand, upgrading means trusting that all the invisible layers holding your workflow together will survive the transition intact. That is where uncertainty enters the picture. Your carefully configured runtime versions, your shell aliases, your local service configurations, your package manager settings, your environment variables, your SSH keys, your database credentials, your Docker configurations, and all the tiny adjustments accumulated over time suddenly feel vulnerable. For developers, these details matter enormously. A small configuration mismatch can create cascading problems. Maybe your Node version manager behaves differently after the upgrade. Perhaps a database service fails to restart due to changed permissions. Maybe a package dependency introduces incompatibility with an older project. These are not catastrophic problems, but they are time-consuming, and they interrupt the creative momentum that every developer depends on. The phrase, "even though it was fun, it did take me a while to get there," perfectly captures the paradox of setting up development environments. There is genuine satisfaction in solving technical challenges and shaping a machine into exactly what you need. Many developers actually enjoy the process. There is a kind of craftsmanship involved. But that enjoyment does not mean you want to repeat it unnecessarily. Building something from scratch can be rewarding, yet rebuilding the same thing because an upgrade broke, it feels entirely different. What makes this transition particularly significant is that Linux Mint 19 is more than just an incremental update. It represents a shift to a newer Ubuntu base, which means substantial underlying changes. While this brings long-term advantages, it also introduces differences in system libraries, package availability, and compatibility expectations. For developers, these lower-level changes can have real effects on tools and workflows. The good news is that Linux Mint has historically prioritized smooth user experiences. The project has built its reputation on stability and user-friendliness. Unlike some distributions that embrace constant change, Mint tends to move carefully, emphasizing predictable upgrades and practical reliability. This philosophy gives reason for optimism. The transition from 18.1 to 19 was designed with continuity in mind, and for most users, especially those with reasonably standard setups, the process has generally been manageable. Still, every development environment is unique. What makes your setup powerful is often what makes it delicate. A developer machine is rarely standard. It is shaped by countless individual choices. Maybe you installed alternative repositories. Maybe you compiled certain tools from source. Maybe you rely on specific versions of language runtimes. Maybe you customized your shell extensively. These decisions create flexibility, but they also introduce variables that can complicate upgrades. This is why preparation matters far more than hope alone. Hoping for a smooth transition is natural, but planning for one is what actually makes it happen. The first and most critical step is documentation. Every serious developer should maintain a clear record of their environment setup. This includes installed packages, runtime versions, configuration files, service settings, aliases, environment variables, and custom scripts. Even if the upgrade goes perfectly, having this documentation provides peace of mind. There is something surprisingly empowering about documenting your setup. It transforms your environment from a fragile, mysterious construct into something understandable and reproducible. Instead of thinking, "I hope nothing breaks," you begin thinking, "If something breaks, I know exactly how to restore it." That shift in mindset reduces anxiety dramatically. Backups are equally essential. Before any major system transition, creating complete backups is non-negotiable. This means more than just saving project files. It means backing up configuration directories, databases, SSH keys, shell profiles, package lists, and anything else tied to your workflow. Tools like TimeShift can be especially valuable here, allowing system snapshots that can restore your machine to a previous state if needed. For developers, database backups deserve special attention. Losing system settings is frustrating, but losing development data can be devastating. Whether you use MySQL, PostgreSQL, MongoDB, or another database, exporting and securely storing your data ensures that no upgrade issue can jeopardize your work. Another smart strategy is testing the upgrade path in a virtual machine. This approach is often overlooked, but it can save enormous time. Creating a VM that mirrors your current setup allows you to simulate the transition and identify potential issues before touching your primary machine. It is a practical way to replace uncertainty with evidence. This testing phase often reveals interesting insights. Sometimes you discover that everything works flawlessly, instantly boosting confidence. Other times you uncover specific compatibility issues that can be addressed proactively. Either outcome is valuable because it replaces guesswork with actionable knowledge. One of the biggest concerns during upgrades is language runtime management. Full-stack development often depends on multiple runtimes, each with version requirements tied to specific projects. Node.js applications may need one version, Python projects another, and legacy systems yet another. Tools like NVM, PINV, and similar version managers can help isolate these dependencies, making upgrades significantly less risky. Containerization adds another layer of protection. Developers who rely heavily on Docker often experience smoother host system transitions because much of their application environment is encapsulated within containers. This separation reduces dependency on host-level configurations and makes the underlying operating system less likely to disrupt workflows. This is one reason modern development practices increasingly emphasize environment portability. The easier your stack is to reproduce, the less intimidating system upgrades become. Docker files, Docker Compose configurations, setup scripts, and infrastructure as code approaches all contribute to resilience. There is also a broader lesson here about the relationship between developers and their tools. It is easy to become attached to a specific setup, treating it as something static that must be preserved indefinitely. But software ecosystems evolve constantly. New libraries emerge, old dependencies become obsolete, security requirements change, and operating systems advance. In this context, upgrades are not interruptions to development. They are part of development itself. Learning how to navigate them effectively is a core technical skill. Every successful upgrade builds confidence, making future transitions less stressful and more routine. That does not mean concerns are invalid. They are entirely rational. If your machine is your primary work environment, protecting its stability is essential. Caution is not resistance to progress. It is professionalism. At the same time, there is real opportunity in transitions like this. Upgrading often creates a natural moment to reevaluate and improve your setup. Perhaps there are outdated tools you no longer need. Maybe certain workflows can be streamlined. Maybe you can automate configuration steps that were previously manual. This kind of refinement turns upgrades from mere maintenance tasks into chances for optimization. Instead of simply recreating the old environment, you can emerge with something cleaner, faster, and easier to maintain. There is a particular satisfaction in this process. The first time your newly upgraded system boots successfully, all services launch correctly, your projects compile without errors, your databases connect instantly, and your terminal feels exactly right, there's an undeniable sense of achievement. It is proof that preparation paid off. And if challenges arise, they often become learning opportunities. Every issue solved deepens your understanding of the system. Every configuration restored strengthens your ability to manage future transitions. Even frustrating troubleshooting sessions often leave behind valuable knowledge. This perspective can make the upgrade process feel less threatening. Instead of viewing it as a potential loss of progress, it becomes another chapter in mastering your tools. The temporary inconvenience is balanced by long-term gains in experience and capability. Linux itself encourages this mindset. It is a platform built around understanding, customization, and control. Unlike more opaque operating systems, Linux invites users to engage directly with the system. This openness is precisely what makes it so powerful for developers. When you build a full-stack development environment on Linux, you are not just installing software. You are shaping a system around your workflow. That process inevitably includes adaptation over time. Upgrades are part of that evolution. The transition from Mint 18.1 to 19 is ultimately a test of how well your setup is designed for resilience. If everything is tightly coupled and undocumented, upgrades feel dangerous. If your environment is modular, documented, and reproducible, upgrades become manageable. This is why experienced developers often invest heavily in automation. Setup scripts, .file repositories, containerized services, and version-controlled configurations turn machine setup from an art into a science. Recreating an environment becomes a repeatable process rather than a memory-based reconstruction. For someone who has just gone through the full setup process manually, this may be the perfect moment to start building that automation layer. Yes, it requires additional effort up front, but it pays dividends every time the system changes. Imagine facing the next major upgrade with complete confidence because your entire environment can be recreated with a few commands. That is the ideal many developers strive toward, and each transition is an opportunity to move closer to it. Of course, there is also value in simply appreciating how far Linux desktop environments have come. Major upgrades used to be genuinely intimidating. Dependency hell, broken package managers, and unstable transitions were far more common. Modern distributions, especially polished ones like Mint, have dramatically improved the experience. Today, a well-prepared upgrade often feels almost anticlimactic. You back up your data, run the upgrade, reboot, and continue working with minimal disruption. This level of reliability reflects years of refinement across the Linux ecosystem. That progress is worth recognizing because it changes how we think about desktop Linux. It is no longer just a playground for experimentation. It is increasingly a mature, dependable platform for serious professional work. For developers, this is particularly exciting. The line between server environments and desktop workflows continues to blur. Linux offers consistency across both worlds, making it uniquely powerful for full-stack development. When your local machine mirrors production environments more closely, deployment becomes smoother, debugging becomes easier, and system behavior becomes more predictable. Upgrading within this ecosystem is not just about desktop features. It is about maintaining alignment with the broader infrastructure landscape. This is another reason why moving to newer releases matters. Staying current helps ensure compatibility with evolving development standards. New frameworks, libraries, and tooling increasingly assume modern system foundations. Delaying upgrades indefinitely can create technical debt at the operating system level. Eventually, the gap becomes larger and transitions become harder. Incremental movement is usually the healthier path. So yes, hoping for a smooth transition from Linux Mint 18.1 to 19 is completely reasonable. After investing time and effort into crafting a full-stack development environment, nobody wants unnecessary disruption. But smooth transitions rarely happen by accident. They happen because of thoughtful preparation, good documentation, solid backups, and an understanding of the system you have built. The encouraging reality is that if you approached your original setup with care and attention, you already possess the skills needed to navigate this upgrade successfully. The same patience and problem-solving ability that built your environment can guide its evolution. And perhaps that is the most reassuring thought of all. Even if the transition is not perfectly seamless, you have already proven that you can shape your machine into exactly what you need. That capability does not disappear during an upgrade. If anything, it becomes even more valuable. In the end, this is what being a developer on Linux is really about. It is not just using tools, it is understanding them deeply enough to adapt as they change. Each setup, each configuration tweak, each upgrade, and each challenge solved becomes part of a growing foundation of technical confidence. So, while it is natural to feel cautious about moving from 18.1 to 19, there is also every reason to feel optimistic. because the journey of building and maintaining a development environment is never really finished. It evolves alongside your skills, your projects, and the technology itself. And every transition, no matter how uncertain it feels at first, is another step forward in that process. What began as concern about repeating hours of setup work can become something more valuable, a chance to strengthen your workflow, improve your practices, and deepen your mastery of the platform you rely on. That is the real story behind upgrades like this. They are not just about moving from one version number to another. They are about growth. And if handled thoughtfully, the transition from Linux Mint 18.1 to 19 can be less of a disruption and more of a milestone in your evolution as a Linux developer.